Hi, I'm Dan Smith and welcome. Today I want to revisit a project that we did in Cryptoviewing nearly 18 months ago. At the time we were tasked blindly to look at the origin of the coronavirus. All of us as remote viewers came up with some spectacular data, but at the time it didn't seem like it fit the feedback that we had. The feedback for the origin at the time was it was the wet market and some kind of virus there that spread throughout the vicinity. Since then, we have a whole new wealth of information and a whole new wealth of news sources that have come online, especially in the last couple of months. The details now emerging seem to indicate more than any other possibility that the lab leak scenario is the best possibility of the leak of this virus. What we want to do today is show you some of the news I've gathered on this, go back through the remote viewing data that we gathered ourselves 18 months ago, and then allow you to make your own determination near the end. I think this is really important because remote viewing is a great tool for looking at these kind of things when we get sufficient feedback. And I think the feedback is now coming online to a sufficient order to validate our remote viewing data. This is also an important case because to date there have been 199 million cases of coronavirus and there's 4.237 million deaths because of this. It's a very, very important case and is a very, very important example of how remote viewing can look at information way in advance. So take a look at the data, take a look at the news sources that I'll be posting here as well. I've gathered all the great news sources detailing that the origin of the lab seems to be the most likely scenario. Have a look at the remote viewing data and determine and make up your own mind. So thanks for watching, take care, have a look at the data.
The media, the Democrats, and the so-called experts are now finally admitting what I first said 13 months ago. The evidence demonstrates that the virus originated in a Chinese government lab. Couldn't say it.
Donald Trump there making a somewhat rare post-presidency appearance. It was a few days ago. He was at North Carolina's Republican Party convention. There was widespread condemnation when Trump first floated the lab leak theory last year, but that theory is no longer dismissed as just some conspiracy theory. Calls are growing to investigate whether the COVID-19 virus originated in a lab in Wuhan, China, where the outbreak began. Catherine Eban is an investigative journalist and author, and she conducted a months-long investigation into that lab leak theory on behalf of Vanity Fair. Catherine, I got about 1 million questions for you. Let's see how many we can get through together. Let's start with gain-of-function research. That was what was being done at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it was actually, in some parts, being funded by the U.S. government. Can you explain to us what it is and what the American connection is?
Sure. So gain-of-function research, which is controversial in the virology world, is basically the manipulation of pathogens to see if they could become more infectious. Some people view it as exceedingly high risk. You're manipulating something that doesn't exist in the natural world necessarily, with the possibility of unleashing it accidentally. And other people view it as very necessary as a way to gauge where the next set of risks would be. So the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which was 7 miles away from the seafood market where the COVID-19 outbreak began, was engaged in this research with coronaviruses. And it was funded in part through grant money from the National Institute of Health and an entity called USAID, which is a sort of overseas development set of monies that the US government has. So, this has sort of complicated the picture of the origin of COVID-19 with people asking, is it possible that somehow accidentally COVID-19 emerged from this laboratory, not necessarily as a bioweapon, but as a laboratory accident?
And I think back to sort of those early days and President Trump, who himself was talking about this was perhaps a lab leak. It came out of the lab. And as a result, some people totally latched onto that theory. Other people said, well, if the president is saying it, then it can't possibly be true. What did you learn about the impact about Trump's words?
So those premature statements were really unfortunate because they dramatically politicized the question of the origin. And, within the US government, it created, as one source told me, a kind of antibody response where, government agencies were very concerned, rightly, about making false claims that were not supported by fact. So there became a sort of allergic reaction to asking what are, in retrospect, some important questions about the origin of COVID-19.
There was also questions early on within the U.S. State Department about the possibility of a lab leak, and particularly about what could be said. What did you uncover about that?
Well, there were meetings in which a number of State Department officials say, and we collected contemporaneous documentation to this effect, they were basically told they should not be sort of digging into these questions of the Wuhan Institute of Virology's gain of function research because it could end up pointing towards US involvement in it. So they viewed these admonitions as a kind of a cover-up. On the other hand, the people who are making those statements say what they were trying to say something completely different. They say that they were simply warning that you could not necessarily claim something untoward from the fact that there was risky research going on at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What I was able to uncover is documentation about this debate within the State Department.
We, to this day, don't have evidence which proves one way or another that this was or was not a lab leak. And yet I look at the database that is also discussed in the article, in the work that you uncovered. It was taken, this was the database at the Wuhan lab, it was taken offline. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is their database where they log all of the bat coronavirus samples that they had collected in nature and all the strains that they were working with. The lead researcher there had made a claim that the database was taken down sort of in the middle of the pandemic because of attempted hacking. But in fact, independent researchers in this group that I write about called Drastic were able to identify that the database was taken down actually 3 months before the start of the pandemic. So, that combined with questions about whether there was some concealment of certain viral strains that they'd uncovered in a mine shaft in Yunnan province raises questions about certainly a lack of transparency at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You talk about a lack of transparency. We certainly saw during the WHO, the very initial investigation that went over, that the Chinese were not at first receptive of it and controlled, perhaps limited what those investigators could see. We see President Biden has now called on his intelligence agencies to come up with an answer about COVID's origins, looking at the lab leak theory. Do you think we'll actually ever get an answer?
It's really hard to say. President Biden has directed his intelligence agencies to sort of go back to the drawing board, see what else is in their files about this. Within the US government right now, both hypotheses, that of a natural origin or that of a potential laboratory origin, are both still on the table. But the other issue is that as time passes, as one scientist, David Relman, told me, biological signals degrade and it becomes more difficult to sort of unearth clues about the origin.
Catherine Eban, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
A seafood market, a virology lab, and a mine deep in the mountains. Key events at these places in China could be crucial to understanding how a small cluster of coronavirus cases ended up sweeping the world. Because almost a year and a half into this global health crisis, politicians and scientists are still debating how it all started.
If you're going to look for the origin of a pandemic, you really should start right away when the clues are fresh. Right now, that's looking pretty difficult.
That's because access to Wuhan has been really limited.
Until you nail it down definitively, you've always got to keep an open mind that it might be something else.
The main hypothesis is that the virus originated from bats, jumped to another animal, then to us. And the leap to humans might have happened here at this market. 10 miles away is where some scientists believe that the virus may have accidentally leaked from a lab. And both of these spots in Wuhan have an increasingly important connection to one place that's over 1,000 miles away in the mountains of Yunnan province. So we visit these key places to break down what we know about the coronavirus to understand how the global pandemic may have started. Stop number 1, the Huanan Seafood Market, December 31st, 2019. This is the day the WHO learned about a cluster of pneumonia cases in Wuhan, and increasingly the focus was on the market. The complex spans an area that's the size of 9 football fields and has over 600 stalls. About 10 of those were selling wild animals like bamboo rats, hedgehogs, and hog badgers.
These wildlife are raised on farms, sometimes in crowded conditions where it's easy for animals to spread viruses back and forth between each other, and the viruses start to mix and match and can change.
Some wildlife that are receptive to coronavirus infections are consumed in China, either for food or used in traditional medicine.
These animals are shipped to urban markets where they are sold, sometimes live and butchered on site. And all this contact with live, possibly infected animals or the infected fresh meat has become a major concern in recent years.
And in Wuhan, many of the first cases were either vendors who worked at the market or people who had shopped there. By January 1st, Chinese authorities shut the place down.
Well, originally, Chinese authorities did feel that it possibly came from the Huanan market and from, wild meat of some sort.
About 3 weeks later, scientists in Wuhan and Beijing published a pivotal paper in the medical journal, The Lancet. This chart shows how some of the early cases were people who hadn't been at the market. More than a year later, there was new data to piece together a clearer picture. That's because China allowed a group of international scientists to come to Wuhan for several weeks to visit the market and hospitals.
A team from the WHO that visited China also learned, going through the data, that by mid to late December, the viruses that were infecting people were genetically different enough that they knew it wasn't all coming from the same place.
The WHO said the presence of early cases not linked to the market could suggest that it was not the original source of the outbreak. And increasingly, one place the team visited is at the center of another hypothesis, the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
This is a world-class institute with high-security laboratories and does a lot of work with scientists outside of China. Very vibrant collaboration before the pandemic. They would travel to caves where bats are known to roost and take samples and then study them in their lab.
These bat coronaviruses and pathogens are cataloged in databases. The researchers used this library of information to compare it to blood samples and oral swabs from patients in Wuhan. And about a month after the market was closed, these researchers discovered that COVID-19 had a 96.2% genetic match with the bat coronavirus that the institute had found back in 2013. Scientists around the world considered this a breakthrough in the search for COVID-19's source because it strongly indicated that it could have originated in bats.
This laboratory studies bat coronaviruses right in Wuhan. It was an obvious question, could it have escaped? And even the Institute's own researchers asked that question and went and did their own research.
As questions swirled around a possible accident at the Institute, its top bat coronavirus experts said the virus didn't leak from her labs, and none of its staff have tested positive for COVID-19.
These are not the first times that we've had a world exposed to viruses as a result of failures in a Chinese lab.
Last year, what started out as a basic scientific question got politicized with a lot of finger pointing at China, yet there was no evidence presented.
Anything interesting?
And there was also limited access to data during the WHO-led team's trip to Wuhan. One of the stops was the Virology Institute.
They asked questions and they had a tour, but they didn't get any firsthand look at databases, medical records, any sort of raw data which would have shed light on whether the virus could have escaped or not.
Almost a week later, scientists summed up their findings at a press conference. They said the spillover from an intermediate host to humans was likely to very likely. And as for questions surrounding the lab,
the findings suggest that the laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely.
But later, the WHO chief said the team didn't sufficiently examine the lab hypothesis and called for a fuller probe. 3 months later, after that press conference, a group of leading virologists and epidemiologists wrote a letter saying there were no findings in clear support of either a natural spillover or a lab accident.
This group of people is not saying that they believe it came from a lab. What they're saying is that there's not enough evidence to rule it out. Scientists investigate hypotheses and they rule them out one by one. And they just said that process hasn't been able to happen and it needs to happen.
China says it's cooperated fully with the effort to search for COVID-19's source and has urged the WHO to investigate early cases in other countries. And one place that could provide some new evidence for both hypotheses, Yunnan. It's China's southwesternmost province and home to many coronavirus-carrying bats, and could set the stage for where the investigation into the origin of the virus could go next.
It's clearly an area where coronaviruses are circulating, including coronaviruses that are very closely related to SARS, the epidemic in 2003.
Researchers from the Wuhan Institute of Virology went to Yunnan to study large bat populations inside caves. In these crowded spaces, viral strains can mix together and become the building blocks of coronavirus that then jump to humans.
And at the same time, there are wildlife farms there that supply animals to Wuhan.
Scientists say this could explain how a virus from a bat cave leapt to an intermediate host, then made its way to the market. There was also a mine in Yunnan where scientists from the institute spent some time from 2012 onwards. It's where 6 miners who'd been clearing bat droppings had gotten sick and developed an unexplained pneumonia. 3 of them died. So in 2013, scientists from the institute went to the cave to collect samples from bats. A virus from one of these samples turned out to be that 96.2% genetic match that was discovered by the institute and hailed as a big break during the early days of the pandemic. It took months for the institute to reveal that the bat coronavirus samples were from the mine and that there were sick miners.
The failure to describe it more became kind of a touch point for people who wanted more information from the laboratory about the viruses they do have and what work they've been doing with them.
Then, there was another allegation about the institute that surfaced more than a year later.
What U.S. intelligence officials learned is that there were 3 researchers who became ill enough to seek hospital care. They had symptoms that were like COVID, but the symptoms like COVID are also like flu symptoms, and flu was definitely circulating in Wuhan at that time.
4 days after the intelligence report about the sick lab workers, the Biden administration ordered a U.S. intelligence inquiry into the 2 scenarios. China said the report was untrue.
病毒溯源是科学问题，而非政治工具。
Some people don't believe China and say this has to be a cover-up. Others say we just need to verify. That's what we do in science. We verify. We look at the data and reach our own conclusion. It really does boil down to a question of transparency.
So for any progress to be made in the origins of the virus, it'll ultimately require more data and fuller access to where it was first detected in China.
Okay, hello, crypto fans. Dennis Nappy II here. We're just discussing this week's target. As I was saying a minute ago, it's a very relevant, very timely target that our viewers were blindly tasked to look at. Kilo 1 Ida 8, Robert 2 Kilo 1 was the target. I'm going to do the target reveal in a minute. Anybody have any other commentary before we take a look at what the target itself was?
Okay. Not yet.
Here we go.
Well, this will be an interesting discussion.
I agree. I'd like to say I'm looking forward to it, but I'm actually kind of dreading it. Here we go. This target here is the coronavirus. You were tasked to draw the virus. Where was it created? Was it weaponized? Does it target specific ethnicities of people? Then we're looking at which countries will have medical curfews, medical martial law, by June 1st, 2020, just a few months away. So there's our tasking document. I'm curious to hear your data on that. Anybody want to volunteer to go first to share their sessions? Okay, no volunteers. I'm just going to go in the order of my screen. Daz, you got the biggest smile. You're up, buddy.
Damn. Okay. Well, I did two, but the first one was a bit mixed, so I kind of exited it early. So I started off on session one with lots of energy, which was complex and moving, vibrational, and it felt alive. I knew there was a person involved who was very emotional, surprised, and shocked, and they were part of an event. And then I tried to draw the target, and I had this, it just looked like an organic type thing there. The rest of the session wasn't really good on number one, so I'll go to the second session where I tried to look a bit more at this organic thing because I felt that was important. So I tried to expand it here, and then I did this drawing of it, and it wrapped up, and I felt it was organic and microscopic. I got this like bubbly kind of shape to it there, and saying it loves sugar for some reason.
Huh. Sounds like cancer.
Yeah, it did a little bit, yeah. Then there was a life involved, and he was having some symbiosis with this life form. So, I went straight into an AOL there of coronavirus.
Symbiosis is an interesting statement, though, because that means it would be mutually beneficial.
Does it mean beneficial, or does it just mean they're working together in some way? I don't know.
Like a symbiotic relationship. They are working. It's not harmful to the host.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, some people may be carriers. And
maybe the super carriers. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So then I had I asked Edward. I asked Ed. Because I had some problems with my first session. He sent me some questions to ask, so I asked some questions here, like who created it. I had these males, corporate white coats, in lab coats, Asian, a team from a pharmaceutical business. Also, I got there at the bottom. A team of at least 3, all similar build looks, Asian, 28 to 38. They're dedicated, busy. They're in a modern, white, clean environment. Feels urban. Feels like it's in the center of a large city. The location feels shockingly central, very urban. It's in a major city in Asia, suffering, and it's on the coast. It's very high tech. They're looking for something. They're looking for something to do regeneration. And this feels like it's a byproduct or a mistake, an accident, and then it's kind of leaked out, or it feels like it was stolen. I felt. I sense a feel of panic, and they're hiding something. I feel like this is an early version or a broken version or not complete version of something. It feels like it's created in a lab, and it's being mixed and mutated with lots of living things. And I tried to draw a what here. I got it's just puffy. This thing seems like it was discarded in the process some way. Feels like it's a half stage to something else, which is why it causes a problem. And I asked, what was this problem? I got something about absorption, something about eating, energies and conversion. It's problematic, it's chaotic, and it's not final enough.
I wonder if that's tied into the sugar, Daz.
Quite possibly, yeah, quite possibly. And I've got here some more notes. This feels like it's man-created, microscopic organism. The intent behind this does not feel nefarious. It does feel nefarious, sorry.
Okay.
There is a feel of both business and competition, some kind of conflict and warfare with this. This isn't the real final thing, though. This feels like it's a part stage towards something more perfected.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Does that mean there's a final thing coming, anticipated? Did you get that sense?
I don't think I'm not sure if I went that far ahead with it. It just feels like it was something they were working on but not finished, and yeah, it's not a finished version.
Okay.
So I got where, who here, and it's man-made, Asia, China. Is it a weapon? Not yet, but could be when finalized. Is it targeted towards ethnicities? Not yet, but can do eventually. I think I've got, is there any restrictions? Yes, there's some temporarily, but they'll be fixed soon. And there's a feeling of a lot of subterfuge with this target. It feels like it's got a military and corporate restricted access component to it. Someone is gathering a ton of useful data just on how this is spreading. It feels like it's something to do with light exposure, and it can be destroyed within explosion, but I don't know. I don't know what that's about. Do I have any more?
Daz, your movement directions there, was that coming from you, or were you tasked with those?
No, that was coming from me, I think. I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay, because I mean that's spot on to what you were asked to look at, which is interesting.
This feels like an energetic bubble of micro substances, proteins and alike. It's manipulated. It's at a broken stage of something. It's being developed further. It's not working fully yet. Feels like it's an accidental reaction. The men behind this are educated, methodical, scarily non-emotional. They work in an urban city. Feels like it's a corporation or a business. And there's a team of at least 3 top men. They're Asian, with dark hair, middle-aged. Some of them are American educated. They've been selected for this and they're highly paid. Feels like they're well on the way to something worse, something more defined, something more potent and specific. They feel contracted as if they're working for a client. And the end result on this feels like it's something to do with triggers, temperature, and something called a fizzle rate, but I don't know what that is. I just my final note was I'm stopping here because it feels kind of scary, and I'm not too sure if I was front loaded with some of the questions or not that I had in the first session.
Okay.
That's scary stuff.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit terrifying, Daz.
Yeah.
Possibly future weapon that they're looking at, and they're gathering a lot of data on that which would make sense, seeing how it works, seeing how, I mean, they're getting a great, from an intel standpoint, they're getting a great measure of how different countries are prepared and how they're responding to it.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that's coming out. I mean, I literally just this evening I had some stuff come through about how a lab in China is been thought of as being, it's been kind of pointed out as being the host source for this now. And it's a government lab as well. So
yeah, it's one of 2 labs in China that works on their it's in Wuhan, where they're what's it, biochemical warfare or biological warfare laboratory. There was some discrepancy about it. The guy, I think, was a former Israeli intelligence officer for something like 20 years, and they were trying to discredit him. But when you listen to the guy's credentials, he's the only one that made that claim initially. That's where it came from.
Yeah, this is what I'm reading tonight. Sudden militarization of the P4 lab raises new questions about the origin of the virus. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that kind of tallies with the data I was seeing.
There's drips and drabs coming out, but coming from the former intel officer, I mean, he's got strong credentials. He's got a PhD in like virology or something, and he says nothing. I think the UN even said nothing confirmed, but it's suspected that, or the CIA report that this was a biological warfare laboratory.
Yeah,
that came out a couple of years ago. They said that.
There's some scary stuff like that. I don't know if you guys saw as well, but that billionaire on YouTube did a video yesterday, and he says there's 50,000 dead in China, 1.5 million infected, and 250 million people under quarantine.
A billionaire on YouTube.
Yeah, well, he's a billionaire from China, but the video of him actually saying this on a news media channel is on YouTube.
Wow, I have to look for that.
It's I can share your screen. It's this one here.
Okay. See, I just wonder how much of this is propaganda, fear tactics, scare them up. We don't know. Who knows? Maybe the other viewers have some data on that.
Yeah. Well, it's scary. It's scary. Like literally a few hours before I came online here, just looking at the news, and it was on the BBC News that China got its figures wrong, and today they just added another 14,000 cases. It's spreading quite fast here in the UK. You know, within a day, and they're only small figures. They went from like 4 to 9 people in a day.
Yeah, but that's a day. That's almost more than doubled in a day.
We watch Korean news here in our house. Mimi has the Korean news on, and they have so many coronavirus stories. It's like it's almost wall-to-wall coverage there. It's not even mentioned on, well, there's no news on cable anymore in America.
No.
But
and if they went from 4 to 9 cases with an incubation time of 14, I'm even hearing 28 days incubation time, then who knows what's going to happen in the coming
years. Here in the UK, we had a doctor had it, you know, and of course the doctor in the UK sees hundreds of people a day. So they literally had to shut down 2 days ago. They had to shut down a surgery, and because he'd been seeing kids in schools, they've had to shut down 2 schools and test all the kids at all the schools and everything.
Wow, that's scary.
Let's see the rest of the data, and then we'll do the discussion.
Okay, let's move to Dr. Doom, also known as Edward Reardon. Story for us.
Dr. Doom. Well, this was very, going through the feedback here, familiar to me. Felt massive. I felt something massive, energetic, moist. And I was seeing this cloud, large cloud of particles, massive cloud. This is big, massive in scale or scope, blinding outside, inside. My EI, familiar, something I know or know of, large scale, like a wind of small particles, small things on a massive scale. Watch out, it's in the wind, man. This thing was coming at somebody here, and it was creepy. In the wind, in the air, a carrier agent, like a blanket of particles to watch out for. Beware, it's like the creeping death. Get away. This guy's choking and dying. This is like a biblical creeping death, like a cloud that slowly moves in under people's feet, like death or the grim reaper is coming for you. Is it radioactive or toxic waste, I'm wondering? Move to the origin of this cloud and describe near water or something in a mist. Bad water, toxin added, I'm wondering. Reminds me of something out of a chemistry lab that is saturated, that has saturated the ground and soil and is breathing itself into the air and onto and into people and things.
Hey,
what is it?
Edward, real quick, if I can interject, I did read an article where they suspect that it was traveling through the sewage pipes in one apartment building because they couldn't explain any other way of transmitting it, which would go through the water.
Wow. Well, that, you got it, man. What is the chemistry? A chemistry lab coats, bio readings, plants, animals, developing toxins, toxic chemicals, biohazards. What is the molecule? I wanted to know. A biolocator came in. Tangible biolocator. I'm wondering, what is that? What is that? Who's doing this and what's that all about? What is a biolocator? I'm wondering here. Something for a simulation, like an army exercise. A simulation exercise for monitoring results. Game of function exercise, I'm wondering. Biolocator, like being able to detect someone or monitor them, and it felt like a very strange molecular structure, like a biohazard, it felt like. And this was my hazard sign here. A lethal dose. Stay away from this. A small amount could be lethal. Liver damage, kidney damage, lung, throat damage. And in this facility here, weapons facility, I'm wondering, toxic warfare, chemical lab, biolab, lab rats. This place is not good. Dark energy here, bad molecules are here, cutthroat people. This is a bad place. Oh yeah, this reminded me of the Atlantean black goo or the Atlantean black ooze. Do not enter this place. And this reminded me of my ominous feeling session.
Yeah,
with
which
the
I know
same
you were
facility.
comparing that to this virus.
Same
The
facility.
biomarker is interesting, Edward. You know, I'm wondering if this is something where there's tech out there that can detect who's carrying it.
Well, don't they? Yeah, probably. But they got some kind of testers are doing with. Well, that's a temperature.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Just temperature is the only thing.
The only thing there.
But I'm curious with your data if there's something else in it for whoever maybe gets it and doesn't die from it. Maybe it leaves them some kind of tracer or some kind of indicator in there.
This is bad news. This is creeping death.
Well, I hope you're wrong.
It's coming for us. I hope I'm wrong too. This was a creepy session.
Well, let's move to Dick. I'm hoping he has some really happy news about cures and people.
Yeah, I got two little girls playing with Barbie dolls and with lollipops. All right, let's get right to it. First thing I saw was two people. Next, I had for a visual ideogram, this is unusual because it was colored. I saw people inside in a big place, and it had a really interesting decor to me. Bright colors of red and gold and things hanging down. And let me stop this and just, what I saw was like big pillowy colors, drapes or like curtains hung, big curtains in red and gold. Okay, so and people inside. So let me show you that again. So that's how I drew it. I want you to look at the Communist Party headquarters in China.
Oh, great.
See what you think. Okay. Continuing on. Person, complex, semi-hard, man-made, dynamic, complex, semi-soft, natural, dynamic, man-made. Okay. I was in land, and then the thing that all of a sudden struck me was people walking on foot. I could hear crunching sounds. Barrier, no pass. People in a vehicle being turned away. And these barriers felt hastily erected.
That actually happened too, Dick. There's small towns in the outskirts of Wuhan that were trying to put up barriers and actually destroying roads to prevent people from escaping the city and coming into these small villages.
Okay, so I have people with in uniforms, no pass, no go, blockade, barricade, crudely built, stuff stacked up, people walking, city in the background, road blocked off, feet on gravel, people speaking, pleading, authoritative. Okay, and then the next thing, this I really popped on. Hang on.
Uh-oh, he's got it.
Yeah, I've been fighting a cold.
You can catch it through remote viewing now.
He caught it.
Beware.
I really popped to target. Here I go. As I was looking at people, I closed my eyes, and there were two long tables, counters, excuse me, with stainless steel. Let me show you I'll show you the, stop choking. So these two stainless steel counters with like beakers and stuff, glass cabinets, long room, clean, sterile, sounds of people, stuff, being set down, rattle, clicking, smells of chemicals. It smelled like a dentist's office to me. Clinical. Surfaces are important. Open, unlock, it's locked. Important research, long tables made of stainless steel, shiny, clean, lots of glass. So this felt like a lab. Next, I looked at land, urban near a river, eerie quiet, smog, bad smells, decay, thick haze, bad air. That's Edwards. Bad air, grayish, brownish haze, unhealthy, bad feeling, death, corona. Then I had a guy in a lab, goggles and a mask. Breathing is measured, dentist office smell. He's measuring, inculcate, intubate, what's the word? Intubate, inoculate, infuse. So he's making something. Has feces came to me, cold temperature control, feeder flask. I haven't looked at this data since I collected it. Chinese, but he doesn't work for the Chinese government. Drip, 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 drips fluid into a vial or two. And then I saw somebody being executed by AK-47. So they're blind with rage from this person. Kneel, handcuffed, shot with AK-47. Boom. I felt the emotion of just this raw terror, penalty, retribution, punish. Like, did somebody make a mistake or get caught letting this? You know, I just heard that some of the officials in Wuhan were relieved of duty, like they were replaced. Yeah. I wonder if they were taken out and shot.
Huh.
Didn't the initial whistleblower, he ended up dead too.
He's dead. The doctor, yeah, he died last week. This week.
But my takeaway from this session, like what I really got was barricades, and I didn't get where. I thought initially I was in Western U.S., like high desert.
I hope not.
So, but barricades, and then that laboratory, the stainless steel, I was there, and the glass beakers and stuff. Then the guy measuring, doing something, and then the execution. Somebody was like, okay, take him out and shoot him.
The guy that was shot there, was this in the news today?
Huh.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So this data, our data here, when we're doing, your data is over a week old. Mine was, what's the date on mine? Mine's been, I did it 5 days ago. So, okay, interesting.
So let me just ask a question then. What are the chances that some of this is somehow front-loaded and spilled in from our fears and things we've been watching in the media? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely possible.
That can always happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But all three sessions do have spookily, eerily similar data in there about, you know, that looks like a manufacture of this. You know, it's not like the official story is that this comes from someone, some kind of weird animal. Yeah. But that's not what any of the session data is showing in any way.
So
the official story also says that in Wuhan is a biolab where they were infecting bats with a novel coronavirus that suddenly ended up on a slab at their local market. And oh, gee, how did that happen? You know? It's like, can you get more obvious?
So based on this data and based on the sessions that you guys did, what's your reaction to this virus now, to the hype? I mean, are you going to do anything differently? Are you going to stock up on your preps? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I already have. I'm knee deep in cans of beans and rice, storable food. I have a water filter on the way. We've got bottled water. I've got 4 to 8 pounds of vitamin C, ascorbic acid powder, liposomal, colloidal silver generator on the way. I have colloidal silver. I have good quality vinegar. We were going to do a segment, we will pretty soon, on steps you can take. But, you know, just looking at this would be interesting to get rudimentary analysis, because the corroborating data of science in lab coats, laboratory created, it all, you know, we all had that.
Yeah.
Nobody had bat soup.
No, so, you're right.
Well, that was some interesting session work for the Patreon people. You see how remote viewing can be used and how 3 different viewers get zero in the target differently. Daz was at the level of the virus itself. You know, Edward was big picture of the spreading air, and I had the people. So, but all essentially agreeing. That was a good example of how remote viewing can be used. I feel the targeting was a little complex. You want to, you know, we probably could have done a couple targets. Like one would be the origin of the coronavirus creation. And then another one would be like, let's look at a major city 2 months from now and see if it's under lockdown. But it was pretty good stuff. I mean, very, very interesting, worth considering, and not too rosy.
It's definitely worth everyone keeping on the
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dad. Go ahead, Dad. You were saying something?
I was just saying it's definitely worth everyone out there keeping an eye on how this develops, because it could go either way at the moment.
There was a familiar feeling. Here's my ominous feeling session from 2017 of a coming virus. And there's the facility right there, where the breach, where the virus comes out. And here it is here. There's my familiarity.
Do you think the ominous feeling is the same as Corona, Edward?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know you talked about that on your YouTube channel.
Without a doubt.
That was scary, that was almost like an intelligent something that was created, correct? Was that the one with the fibers? And
yeah, I'm waiting. I'm getting some more. Somebody just sent me some information about what the virus looks like inside, the strands inside of the virus.
Yeah.
And what it looks like inside of that little fuzzball.
Because you had something that sounded almost like like an biological AI Morgellons disease, if I remember correctly.
Well, I didn't say the Morgellons.
You didn't name Morgellon, but I remember thinking it sounded like that.
It was a deadly pathogen that came out of a frickin' lab.
Yeah.
Just like that one.
Well, again, I love you guys, but I hope you're really wrong on this.
Yeah.
Time will tell, I guess. If we ever get to know, it being the spread being in a communist country and everything, it's hard to get real news.
And that's the caution I want to exercise with. I see a lot of stuff being shared, and it's people falling out of cars and people in masks coming in. Like they wear masks in China all the time. We don't know how recent that footage is, if it's related to Corona, but these videos are coming out and they're being labeled as coronavirus. Look how they're treating these people and everybody's dying. That could be true, but in a country that's locked down as tight as China, I think it's pretty interesting that all of a sudden we're getting all these leaked videos of people in the streets falling down.
Yeah.
That's a red flag for me.
As an end segment for this project, we would like to also share with you a remote viewing target from 2019, the remote viewer Edward Riordan. The target itself was what will cause the transit to digital currency. We feel this is also appropriate at this time.
Okay, now we go into the Alice in Wonderland. This feels like living organisms being grown like a bacteria in a lab. Growing organism in a facility. These organisms are growing and possibly multiplying. They are being fed with artificial light and nutrients like bacteria or spores. Some experiment here feels scientific under scientific supervision. That's a little concerning to me. Then again, I'm here with this clouds. There are electric impulses moving through a complex jumbled network, vibrating, stimulating electrical charge may be being administered to organism. I don't know what feels experimental. I don't know what the hell was going on there. Oh boy, it just keeps getting crazier. A very complex electrical network. This also feels organic or partially organic. Electrical energy buzzing through a complex network. What did I describe that? some big picture element here, something that deals with life or someone that deals with life, science or scientist. This feels like it deals with growing organisms.
Edward, does this feel similar to your ominous feeling data you did a while back?
I was gonna say that, dude.
Yep,
This
sorry.
this was like my ominous feeling session. It was very ominous. Something about this feels related to the target, growth and death and bacteria and science and stuff.
Hi there. So you've seen the remote viewing data and you've seen the latest news sources and feedback. The most likely scenario that seems to be emerging at this point in time, 18 months later, is that the lab leak is the most likely scenario for the spread of the coronavirus. Exactly what we as remote viewers determined through remote viewing data 18 months previous. Anyway, make up your own mind and let us know what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoy this video and keep supporting us, and thank you very much for all the support you've given us over the years. Take care.